Well, here we are. Tonight is our final chapter of Genesis and review. So as we start, let's start with a word of prayer. Dear God, you are almighty and gracious, and your plan for humanity has been evident since the beginning of time as we've been understanding. And God, we're entering the last chapter of Genesis, and we ask that you guide us through this study, that we may hear what you have to say. We invite you to be our guest, to be in our midst. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. What book are we in?
Genesis.
The Bible. Sorry. Genesis chapter
50.
chapter 50. But we didn't quite finish up.
Yes,
Last week we had Jacob on his deathbed, blessing or cursing his sons, as was the need. As we recall, a few of them it wasn't too pleasant, and some of them it was very nice. And that's where we left him, laying on his deathbed. So he's had to take deep breaths and lean with his mouth open for a week now. So here we are. We are going to start at Genesis 49, verse 29. If someone would read that last verses of 49.
I can do that.
Okay.
Then he charged them and said to them, I am about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought along with the field from Ephron the Hittite for a burial site. There they buried Abraham and his wife Sarah. There they buried Isaac and his wife Rebekah. And there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is in it, purchased from the sons of Heth. When Jacob finished charging his sons, he drew his feet into the bed and breathed his last, and was gathered to his people.
Okay. Jacob is dead. Anybody remember the history of this cave that he asked to be buried in?
Well, he didn't own any property. So,
Who's he?
Isaac? No, Abraham.
Abraham. Okay.
And he didn't own any property. So and they wanted to give it to him, but he wanted to own something, right? To have a plot of land that, kind of like when pastors have lived in parsonages all their lives and then it's time to retire and buy a house. He wanted to have something that he owned and a place where he could bury people, and it was his. That's what I remember.
Okay, that's the history of the cave, because Abraham had been a wanderer. He was the one that purchased it, and he was buried there along with his wife. Well, actually, Abraham buried Sarah, and then his sons Isaac buried Isaac, and who else? Just a reminder, who else buried Abraham? Isaac, and who else?
Esau, wasn't it?
Not Esau.
Ishmael.
Ishmael.
Right.
Yes, yeah, Ishmael.
Dan gets a star for the day. The other son. How many sons did Abraham have?
2.
Eh.
A whole lot.
Lost your star.
Abraham had first he had Ishmael, and then he had Isaac, and then after Sarah died, he had at least 3 other sons through other women afterwards. but they weren't sons of the promise, so they got nothing. So just remember that. That's one of those things that nobody remembers. All right, so Abraham and Sarah are buried there. And then Jacob and who buried Isaac?
Esau.
Esau. Now it's Esau. So they buried him, and probably Isaac buried, well, Rebecca, we don't know who buried her, but we did find out that she's dead. And who else is buried there?
Leah,
Where's Rachel?
on the side of the road somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. She died and they had to bury her alongside of the road someplace because they were on the road. Poor Rachel. And so now Jacob is going to go and he's going to be buried forever with the Leah who has the weak eyes.
So Molly, what's the significance of drawing his feet up into the bed?
I have no idea.
Okay, all right, never mind.
I have no idea.
Just curious.
Probably some sense about laying down, and that was it. Doesn't say anything. I don't know. So Jacob is dead and he is asked to be buried in this very significant cave. Is anybody else going to ever be buried in that cave?
Listen, do we look ahead to see?
Actually, here's the answer. I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know, but we know. You ever watch the 10 Commandments?
Long time ago.
Okay. Okay, so you think of the scene when they're all leaving Egypt, and there's these guys, and they're going, "Do, do, do, do." There's always these men singing this deep song, and they're carrying something. Anybody remember the scene? They're going, and then they carry it through the Red Sea, and what are they carrying? These priest-like guys.
The Ark of the Covenant.
Carrying Joseph?
They're carrying Joseph.
Right, okay.
Because eventually Joseph is going to be asked to be carried out, that his body will be carried back. We don't know about anybody else's, but he gets carried back. So maybe he's buried in that cave. We don't know. And probably by the 400 years later, when he's carried out, nobody knows where that cave is. But all right, we are on chapter 50. And if someone will go from verse 1 through 6.
I can do that.
Thank you.
Joseph threw himself upon his father and wept over him and kissed him. Then Joseph directed the physicians in his service to embalm his father Israel. So the physicians embalmed him, taking a full 40 days, for that was the time required for embalming. And the Egyptians mourned him 70 days. When the days of mourning had passed, Joseph said to Pharaoh's court, "If I have found favor in your eyes, speak to Pharaoh for me. Tell him, my father made me swear an oath and said, I am about to die. Bury me in the tomb I dug for myself in the land of Canaan. Now let me go up and bury my father, then I will return." Pharaoh said, "Go up and bury your father as he made you swear to do."
Why do you think Joseph had to ask Pharaoh?
Because he was a servant, essentially.
Yeah. Joseph was pretty high, but he still was nothing because Pharaoh was the god. Gotta have both hands, the god. So he had to ask everything. All right, so let's see. Let's go from 7 through, let's read the next paragraph, 7 through 10.
Through 10 or up to 10?
Through 10.
Okay, I'll do that. Joseph went up to bury his father. All Pharaoh's officials accompanied him, the dignitaries of his court and all the dignitaries of Egypt, besides all the members of Joseph's household and his brothers and those belonging to his father's household. Only their children and their flocks and herds were left in Goshen. Chariots and horsemen also went up with him. It was a very large company. When they reached the threshing floor at Atad, near the Jordan, they lamented loudly and bitterly, and there Joseph observed a 7-day period of mourning for his father.
All right. Have any of you ever been in a culture where grieving is loud and people are fainting, and anybody ever know what I'm talking about?
You know, like New Orleans.
Yeah,
Where-
well, this is why I wish Sue was here, because I didn't witness it, but there was, when we were in Haiti, there was a death in the clinic. And the people, she said, all just kind of rushed forward in like a stream of people, just wailing and screaming at the death of this person in the clinic, someone known to people. And when you have the funerals, the people would be screaming and, I mean, carrying on. And David tells about when he was a kid, and the Italian tradition of the old ones, they would be wailing and screaming, and they would always have smelling salts because they'd be passing out. And it's not part of our culture, but you know, if you think about that, this is the stuff that's going on here. So we're going back to this little place in Canaan with all these Egyptians' chariot and this. How many people were in the household of David, of Jacob? How many people moved to?
70.
There's 70 some people, plus all the friends of Joseph with their chariot. So we're talking, you know, well over 100 people and all their rigmarole and paraphernalia, and it was quite a thing. So let's see the reaction of the people. Let's read from 11 through 14.
I can do that.
Thank you.
Let's see. Okay. When the Canaanites who lived there saw the mourning at the threshing floor of Atad, they said, the Egyptians are holding a solemn ceremony of mourning. That is why the place near the Jordan is called Abel Mizraim. So Jacob's son did as he had commanded them. They carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in a cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre, which Abraham had bought along with the field as a burial place from Ephron the Hittite. After burying his father, Joseph returned to Egypt together with his brothers and all the others who had gone with him to bury his father.
Okay. So we've got Jacob buried, and
Record progress.
Okay, we'll get rid of this one.
okay, I wondered
Yeah.
who was coming in.
Yeah, we've been frozen we keep getting frozen.
Okay.
Yeah,
All righty. Well, Jacob is buried. They're all coming back to Egypt. Do you see any trouble brewing?
Well, in the next verse.
Okay, Dottie, since you've jumped ahead. Since you've jumped ahead, why don't you read then the next paragraph from 15 through 21?
When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, what if Joseph should bear a grudge against us and pay us back in full for all the wrong which we did to him? So they sent a message to Joseph saying, your father charged before he died, saying, thus you shall say to Joseph, please forgive, I beg you, the transgression of your brothers and their sin, for they did you wrong. And now please forgive the transgression of the servants of the God of your father. And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Then his brothers also came and fell down before him and said, behold, we are your servants. Joseph said to them, do not be afraid, for am I in God's place? And as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good in order to bring about this present result, to preserve many people alive. So therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones. So he comforted them and spoke kindly to them.
Okay. Phew. Did Joseph's brother make this up?
Well, Jacob didn't know any of that, did he? He didn't know that they had done all that to Joseph.
Well, they had to know something went on. They had, Jacob knew that they lied to him about Joseph being dead because all of a sudden Joseph was there. So you don't think that story spilled out at that point when Jacob said, "What do
I
you mean?
wouldn't,
What
I
do you mean
wouldn't think
Joseph
all of
is
it
dead?"
did.
But they
think it-
brought the robe, and they brought his robe and it had blood on it and said that he had been killed by a wild beast or something. And then they said he showed up, so obviously, yeah, Jacob knew that things weren't adding up right.
I don't know that they would have confessed that what they did to him.
True. Of course,
Maybe.
they did just bring his robe. They never said that they killed him. They just found his robe bloody.
Exactly.
I don't know. Would you have told the truth after 20 years that this is what happened? Or would you just let your father know
I
you
don't
believed the lie?
I think that because their father loved Joseph so much that they wouldn't take a chance of telling him because they didn't know what he would do. I don't think they would have told him. Maybe somebody else did, maybe they told their wives and their wives told them, but I don't think they would have.
Do you think that secret could have stayed a secret? Because Joseph was talking with Jacob.
Oh,
Joseph would have kept it a secret.
He might have, so his father wouldn't be angry or upset with his brothers.
Yeah, kind of interesting. We don't know. Now, see, and we all come from different perspectives. I thought, geez, the brothers would have told the whole story about what had happened and said, yeah, we really did wrong. And some of you know, some of you are just not.
Shaking my head. No, I don't think so.
I don't think you would have.
There were a lot of brothers and they all had, oh, I'm sorry, Molly.
Go ahead, Carol.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize you were still talking. There were a lot of brothers and then they all had families and kids. And I mean, my suspicion is somebody let it slip. I mean, they all had to have known.
Yeah, but they didn't know what his reaction would be. They might have gotten kicked out of the family. I wanted to keep it a secret as long as they could.
The brothers would have to trust each other or agree that they weren't gonna say something. One got mad at another, then they'd say, I'm gonna go tell, what you did.
Yeah, but would they have trusted that Joseph wouldn't have told him?
They wouldn't.
Wouldn't they have rather told Jacob himself than to have Joseph tell them what happened?
Well, don't you think Jacob had to figure something out? I mean, otherwise, how did Joseph get to Egypt? He had to know that
Something.
That Joseph didn't just walk away and go to Egypt on his own.
With his beautiful coat all strewn with blood.
But he also had these dreams that told him that what was going to happen. So if he accepted that, I think that he would have accepted that it was meant to happen that way.
Yeah. Okay, but now Jacob is dead.
Mary.
Yeah. So now the brothers really are scared now because Joseph isn't going to do anything just to spare their father. So they're terrified. So do you think that Jacob really said anything about this, or do you think the brothers were totally making that up?
I think the brothers were running scared. That's just my guess. Uh-oh, now we don't have our father to protect us anymore. We
So
better,
did they make up the story? Let me run. Sue, are you on and hearing us?
I'm on and I'm hearing you, but can't make my face come on.
Okay, well, to the left, the bottom left corner of your screen, if you move your mouse, you should see a little camera. You can see if that'll come on.
I
Okay,
think Jacob would have said that directly to him.
No, don't see
yeah,
a
I
little
think Jacob would
camera.
have, yeah,
You'll just have to do with my voice.
okay. All right, yeah, I'm in agreement with Mary that Jacob would have told Joseph directly. Because he was a blunt guy. He just said what was on he always did. He was shrewd, but at this end of his life, he said what he wanted to say. But anyway, the brothers made this and said, okay. And Joseph said, hey, what you intended for bad, God intended for good. And I've been thinking about this passage a lot this week as I've talked with my mother-in-law, who, we talked about, on Mother's Day, this is only her third Mother's Day in her whole life. And I think about, we don't know what happened, why David and his brother were born. We don't know the circumstances that made that, but it was a terrible, whatever happened, it was terrible. And it was an evil, horrible thing that happened and haunted her whole life. But now at this time of life, when she needs the most help of ever, she's got a family. And I thought, there is just like an example of Joseph, that this horrible thing happened, and yet God had a plan to turn that into something good when she most needed the help at this end of her life. And I thought, wow. Anybody else got an example of something like that that's happened that you can think of that was really horrible at the time, but then at the end or later on, it turned out that it was something really good?
I
Yes,
keep mentioning this, but when I fell in Israel, I thought that was just about the worst thing that could have happened because I was in so much pain for the whole trip. And yet when I got home, I had that time that I was forced to sit still for a couple of weeks and recover. And I was able to create something that I'm hoping is a blessing to people, and a way to, I really said it earlier. I'm not happy that I fell, but I'm grateful that something slowed me down. Something that I thought was really bad, and it ended up being used for good.
Okay. Dottie, you were going to say something?
Sorry. Yeah.
yes. As I think back to my divorce, and even the fact that I was divorced after promising to not be, that was a terrible time. But I think my life after the divorce has been so much better than beforehand, that I have claimed this verse a lot of times in my life.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
I just know, I don't know, probably a lot of don't know this, but my husband was an alcoholic and struggled for a lot of years about what to do, where to go, how to handle it. And, I was committed. I was committed to the marriage, and he passed away. And I'm blessed because I wouldn't be where I am without him. Wouldn't have my children, I wouldn't have my house, whatever. But I'm as happy as I've ever been. So there was a lot of struggle, and so, yeah.
When I was
when I was drafted and went into the service for 2 years, and that's when Vietnam conflict was going on, there was a lot of not great things happening for those 2 years. And I never ended up in Vietnam, but I saw a lot of the firsthand results of what went on there. And I tried to get, make the best out of things. And I think now when I look back many, many years back, I think of a lot of the opportunities I had and people I met and things I did. So, some good came out of it.
Molly, we would
Yeah.
not know you if you had not been through some struggles earlier in other churches.
That is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. I
I'm
wouldn't.
sorry
have
you
ended
went
up-
through those. I'm really sorry that you had to go through those, but I'm awfully glad that you ended up where you ended up.
Well, there's an awful
too.
lot that I learned, and a lot of strength of character and more joy. Just absolute joy at really good places, because I know how bad some places are and some people are. And, yeah. And I think one of the things from that was one of my 5 years in the belly of the whale, when I was in between churches, where I substitute taught with autistic boys. I had about 3 months in this classroom, and it's like, wow, scales fell off my eyes to begin to understand this disease of autism. And I don't really know why, what for, but I just gained a lot. And I was able to claim myself back through some very bad circumstances, and realize that there really truly is evil in this world, and it doesn't mean that I'm bad,
Right.
that I haven't done things. So yeah, there's a lot. I don't think God says, okay, let's make things really bad for this person today so that it can be better later. But I think God says there's evil in this world, and I know that bad things are going to happen because I don't force anybody. There has to be evil so people can have a choice. And when bad things happen in this fallen world, I've already got a plan to make that better. And I truly believe that.
I do too.
And this one with Joseph, I mean, he saved the entire Jewish faith,
Entire nation.
entire nation, and all of Egypt. How many lives were saved through this one life? So, all right. And now the brothers are spared. They even did this horrible thing, and Joseph realizes that bad thing, but good thing happened from it. So let's read the end of, who wants the honor of reading the last 4 verses, 22 to 26.
I can do
How
that.
about you?
Thanks, Mary.
Okay.
So Joseph and his brothers and their families continued to live in Egypt. Joseph lived to the age of 110. He lived to see 3 generations of descendants of his son Ephraim, and he lived to see the birth of the children of Manasseh's son Machir, whom he claimed as his own. Soon I will die, Joseph told his brothers, but God will surely come to help you and lead you out of this land of Egypt. He will bring you back to the land he solemnly promised to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear an oath, and he said, when God comes to help you and lead you back, you must take my bones with you. So Joseph died at the age of 110. The Egyptians embalmed him, and his body was placed in the coffin of Egypt.
Okay. So Joseph was a son and a dad, and he is now a mummy. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah.
Oh, what a way to go out, I'm telling you.
Bad dad joke.
Bad dad joke. It's a bad dad joke. All right. So Joseph is dead. And where was he in the birth order of all these 12 sons?
The last.
He was 11, wasn't he?
I think he was 11.
Because Benjamin was last.
I don't, yeah, there might have been a couple of the other concubines afterwards, but he was definitely down in the pecking order. I can't remember if he was, but Benjamin was the last. We know that. But
Right, yeah, that's right.
so he said to his, Joseph made Israel's sons promise. So he definitely wasn't the last to die. There were still sons left. He was 110. So, you know, when you talk about someone who's 110, that doesn't seem impossible. And who's the oldest one any of you have ever known or known of?
You mean real people or?
Real people, yeah. Well, these are
Underneath.
real people, just in your lifetime.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, Methuselah, you know, but you're not talking about that, yeah.
A friend of mine, good friend of mine from high school, his mother lived to be like 102 or 103.
We've got Betty Alexander that we all know that's getting up there.
She'll be 100 this fall.
Okay.
Gene
Anybody
Rich-
know anybody older?
hmm,
I did a funeral for a man I think was 107.
Wow.
Yep, he was, and he had his great grandchild had a child. How many generations is that? He had incredible number.
Right.
He was either 105 or 107. I know I've done one for a woman who's 104, and I've done several over 100 funerals. So when you think 110, that doesn't seem impossible. And we're
especially
getting
when some
down.
of them lived way long, you know. at that
Wasn't Herman Bosworth, didn't he turn 100?
Yeah, I think so.
I think he made it to 100.
I think he
Yeah.
did too.
Yeah, but we're getting down. How old were the people at the beginning of Genesis?
That's what I mean. They were,
Oh, 900 years.
How old
800.
was, okay, Methuselah? Anybody know?
900 something, wasn't he?
Nine,
Methuselah lived 900 years. Methuselah lived.
900 years. It ain't necessarily so. On Porgy and Bess, isn't it?
Could be. I just remember the song.
Ain't necessarily so. Okay. So, so now, but we know some of Joseph's brothers were still alive, and he made them promise. And so the grandchildren, and that promise was kept. That they brought his bones back 400 years later. We don't hear about any of the other brothers going back. You think any of the other brothers were buried back in the cave?
You know, I'm going to guess not, because Joseph had to ask permission to leave for his father, you know, and he was kind of the go-between between the Israelites and Pharaoh. That's my guess. And when he wasn't there anymore, the rest of them didn't have the same relationship,
Mhm.
and maybe were afraid to ask or whatever, but would probably have to have asked, don't you think, to leave the country? I don't
Well,
know.
who knows? We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't really know. We just know that now they just stayed there. And Joseph, the prophesier that he was, said, you'll go back. You'll leave this land of Egypt. And I think they're thinking then, why do we want to go back there when we have this best farmland here? Why would we ever want to go back? And so they don't go back for a long time. All right, so we have finished the end of the beginning of the Bible. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about one character from the book of Genesis. And it can't be it can't be Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, or Esau. Can't be them because they're just too easy. Or Joseph. So there, I made something. So I want you to pick out one character in this whole long story. But remember, we've gone all the way from Adam and Eve in the creation. So pick out one character and just highlight that one character. If you jump in quick, you can get the easy ones.
Oh, I like
Hagar.
Noah. Noah.
Okay? Tell me about something about Noah that you hadn't remembered before this study. Or just tell me about Noah.
Well, he trusted what God told him to do when people were probably laughing at him. And I like boats and water, so I would have gotten along good with Noah.
Mhm. So tell me, was Noah perfect?
Hmm,
No,
no, nobody's perfect.
he got drunk and was asleep in his tent or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a big scene with Noah and his sons and his uncovering his nakedness and yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to tell us about Noah, Dan?
No, he spent. I didn't realize how long they were on the boat. You'd hear about the 40 days of rain, but it lasted like a long time. They were on that boat. I think it must have been pretty messy by the time they got done.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
What did they
Okay.
do? Shovel it and throw it overboard?
Yeah.
Could very well be. Okay, somebody else come up with a character from
I'll
Genesis.
do Leah. I'll do Leah. Weak
Oh, you
eyes.
always do
weak eyes.
Leah.
But
But
Leah-
I think I'm going to ban you from that one because you're taking that back from before this study that you already knew.
No, I was gonna say that when
Okay.
we did it before, but I'm thinking about how bad she must have felt when she married this man. She got this man that she married this man, but she had to have known that Rachel was who he wanted. He wanted to marry. And the whole time she was how awful it would have been to be Leah. She had weak eyes. She married this man. He didn't want her. He slept with her, but he didn't want her. And all that time, she was always just the
Older, ugly sister.
yeah, and the way that her husband was so happy with Rachel, and I just can't imagine being the second wife, although she was the first wife, to be treated the way she had to have been. But even if he was a nice guy, he still treated her as if she was worthless because he only loved Rachel.
But remember, there was some times when Jacob had enough of Rachel too. When she was making demands, give me a child and
But do you think Leah felt any better about that? No, she still didn't. I mean, she still wasn't.
she was the second one, yeah. Yeah, but who got buried with him?
So when
Yeah,
she's
no.
dead, she
No.
wins when she's dead.
Okay, somebody else pull out another character.
I would say Hagar. She was,
I said Hagar. Oh, go ahead.
nope, you go. I'll use what you say.
No, I'd like to hear what you say.
Well, I was just gonna say, she was a servant, but she slept with him to have a child because her master couldn't, Sari couldn't, and so, but then she got kind of abused because she did have a child and she got sent away, and she did what she could to protect her son. So it was just interesting to me.
Rough life.
She was told to sleep with them because of her, but then when she did, she got in trouble for it.
Yeah. Yeah, not everybody wins, do they? Nobody will win. Okay. Everybody's got to pick somebody.
Dottie, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that's just good.
Oh, so Di has to have somebody else then.
Sorry.
Somebody else.
Well, I know you said we couldn't do like Abraham,
Mhm.
but Sarah
Okay,
was, she probably was thinking, well, my time is over, my uh, childbearing years are over and I don't have the family I wanted and whatever else, and God still had a plan for her in her old age. And I take a lot of encouragement from that, but, there's might still be something out there for me to do. Not to have a child, not having a child, but
I think God loves it when we tell God not this.
yeah,
God
And-
says, aha.
yeah, or where we tell him our plans and he says, oh yeah, hold my beer.
Mhm. Okay. Sue and Dottie and Clara, I'm not gonna let you off the hook.
I'm trying to think of the name of Joseph's brother that saved him from the pit.
Judah,
Convinced who?
Judah.
Okay. That, if he hadn't done that and convinced his brothers to sell Joseph, there wouldn't be any Israel or the 12 tribes or
Mhm.
King David. So I think he's a significant character.
Okay,
Okay, help me with this one. Who
okay.
was the woman, and it might have been already mentioned, that when she had to go into the field to glean stuff because she was so poor.
That's not yet. That's Ruth, and that wasn't in Genesis.
Well, I like Ruth.
Okay,
Well, we'll have to read
you can
Exodus.
like Ruth, but you failed the test for today.
But you're a jump up on us for the next book.
Yeah.
All right, I'll keep looking. I'll keep
Okay.
looking.
Okay, Dottie, you got somebody? Yours was taken.
The person that helped the spies get over the wall was,
And once again,
was
not
that-
in Genesis, not in Genesis. That was Rahab.
oh,
That was Rahab.
oh,
That was in
hmm.
the next book.
I was a little worried.
Exodus.
I thought I missed it.
Well, I'll tell you while they're still thinking. My character is kind of a group of characters. The Nephilim.
Oh.
Okay, so who's a Nephilim?
Weren't they half gods and half men or something?
Something
or-
like that. They were the giants of old.
Big people, yeah.
Yeah, the sons of God slept with the daughters of men, and yeah, I thought that's just kind of you don't really know what it is. And so these stories that we would go back to the campfire, there's a few stories of people going, oh, tell us that story again of the Nephilim. Oh, who were they? Oh, but this is the story we've been told. And some of that stuff in Genesis, we just kind of go, oh, well. And who was Tubal Cain? He was a great musician. And who was, they're just these stories that are all there. So that's my pick. Okay, Sue and Dottie, you're going to come up with one?
Can I say
Sarah?
Sarah?
Sarah,
Oh.
okay.
We both said yeah.
Okay, good. Well, Sarah was in the Old Testament, in Genesis.
127 years old.
127?
Yep.
Okay,
That's what
there you
chapter 23 says. Yeah.
okay.
She was 90 when she had a baby.
90. So see,
Yeah.
Karen, still hope for you yet.
I said I'm not doing that.
I
Okay.
got two more years yet.
Oh.
Ooh,
Hey, here's something. I just heard this on the news, and just a little side that has absolutely nothing to do with anything. But they are very close to the technology of being able to make from any cell of the body an egg cell or a sperm cell. So they have done it in mice, taken different cells of the body and have made an egg cell and a sperm cell. So that means that 2 women or 2 men could have a child together.
Hmm.
Oh, boy.
Or someone who is infertile, and for some reason they can have a child with someone else, like someone who has fertility issues, they can actually have their own child. Of course, there's lots of negative things I'm sure you can all point out with this, but that is the technology of today. And so it says it makes no difference on your age, that if you wanted to have a child at 85, you could. Maybe you couldn't carry
I
the
don't.
child, but you could have the embryo implanted in someone else, and you could actually have a child at age 90 quite easily now.
If you want
Quite
them, if you want
easily?
them,
I don't think it'll be quite easily.
Well, right
No,
now-
it's just, it wouldn't be you birthing the child. You would just contribute a cell of your body and they would create an egg cell from it. Anyways, the technology is this close.
but right
Well,
now, you'd have a mouse for a baby.
Well, they can do it in mice anyways. So just this thing on the news. All right, so let's go back. I'm going to ask you some questions about Genesis, just to make sure you've got a little bit to maintain, that you've maintained something. Tell me about anything you can know about the different sources of Genesis. I just ask that, see if you can elaborate on that theme.
God.
You're talking about the A and the languages,
Yeah. Like Yahweh,
the voices, Yahweh,
Elohim.
Elohim and priestly,
yeah,
Okay, the different
and
voices.
Deuteronomy.
yeah.
Right, they were the different sources. That Deuteronomy wasn't, it actually came less, but
No.
we have different sources, these different voices that you would hear through, like the first chapter of Genesis. It's so easy to see because they use a different Hebrew name for God. Very clear. So that came from one source, one oral tradition, and this other source came from another oral tradition. If you remember, we talked about Genesis and what the order of creation in chapter 1 and chapter 2 were totally different. They're still stories of creation. So we can see that. So there's these different sources. And sometimes we'd hear like the story of Judah and Tamar. Judah, that his son was married to Tamar and the son died, and then the next son didn't want to be married and God killed him. And so the wife of the sons poses a prostitute to make sure that she could have a child with Judah. And that's right in the middle of the story of Joseph. So it's very clear that's from a different source. Remember, they're oral traditions from different tribes and different campfires, and they're coming together as someone was writing this down over the years. All right, so how
Every
could
once in a while, there is mention of a prostitute, and it seems like there isn't any negativism about that person. It's just feels like that was happening, and
Well, you said there wasn't any negative thing about the prostitutes. Well, if you remember, though, the story with Tamar, who had posed as a prostitute, and Judah came looking for her after she wasn't there, and then she came out and said was pregnant, and they said she had been playing the prostitute and they were ready to kill her. So there definitely was a negativity about that.
And the people that slept with well, there wasn't sleeping going on, but the man that was with the prostitute, there was no negative about that either. It was just sort of like that's what you do.
Well, there were temple prostitutes, weren't there? I mean,
there weren't temple prostitutes in the Jewish temple.
Okay,
There would have been prostitutes in other gods, in the other temples to other gods.
okay.
Because a lot of these gods, as I had it explained to me in seminary, was the gods were mostly gods of fertility, that they wanted to entice the gods to give them a fertile harvest. And so they would have these prostitutes and having sexual acts in the temple to entice the gods to give them a good fertile harvest. That's kind of some of the things that were going on. This was not in the Jewish temple.
Right.
But there have been prostitutes for a long, 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 long time.
The oldest profession.
Well, there were some people arguing over what was the oldest profession.
Okay,
There was a doctor and a lawyer, and the doctor said, well, of course, a doctor, a lawyer, and an engineer were arguing over who had the oldest profession. And the doctor said, well, obviously medical, because God performed the first surgery by taking a rib out of Adam. And the engineer said, oh, no, 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 the engineer, because God created the world out of chaos. And the lawyer said, and who do you think created the chaos?
and, but
Okay. All right. So, the story, we've got these different sources. We've got all these people from different places telling the stories around the campfire, the oral tradition. And we talked a lot about how the stories that you tell around campfires are different than if you were interviewing people to write the biography. I think Mary said it best once. You want to tell the juiciest gossip stories around the campfire. So Genesis was based on oral traditions and stories that had been passed down. And as we get more closer to the end of it, we have more reason to think that there was more factual evidence.
look who's coming in.
Yep, we see that Kathy is there in the car after a concert.
Hi.
He gets all the questions.
Yeah, we're being quizzed right now.
Did you have a
Oh,
good concert?
Oh, the 7th and 8th grade chorus that I played for was just phenomenal. It was so much fun. Yeah.
Good.
Oh, good to see everybody.
Now we're still being tested here. We're still being recorded.
Final exam.
This is the final exam, is right.
We're not doing real well.
So we're jumping in. No, what we did, we'll let Kathy have a turn. We had everybody pick out one character from Genesis that was just something that was outstanding to you. And I'm not even going to give her the limits because she's just been at a concert. One character.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I can think of, as I was rereading, I was thinking of Noah on the ark.
That's
As I
why I
was-
said- that's why I
Because
said-
all of a sudden I'm rereading going, oh, they were on that ark for over a year. And that then the fact that he waited till God told him to go off, and it reminded me, okay, we've got to wait for God's timing and things. But it just struck me, I go, oh my gosh, for one, it must have stunk like heck.
Yeah, we kind of had that exact same
I
conversation.
said the
Are
exact
you
same thing.
serious? Oh my gosh.
Really? Even about the mess on the boat, yeah.
Yep, even about, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. Well, just one other thing that Mary and I were talking about this. I was when I was going back and reading, and one of the things that struck me in my study Bible, that he reminded us that all human beings are related to, going back to Adam and Eve. And I wrote this down because I thought remember this when prejudice enters your mind and hatred invades your feelings. And I thought, if our world could just remember that, because we are all related. Okay, am I good for the night now?
I think, well, we'll see. But,
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
okay, so the book of Genesis, and for me, I think one of the most outstanding things in the book of Genesis is that it shows the reality of people.
Mm.
It doesn't show them like a sitcom, either you're good or you're bad or you're silly or you've got one dimension. These people were all three-dimensional. They had really good things and they had really bad things. And then they just had normal things going on. All of them.
Molly, we talked about that at the end of last week's lesson. And I wrote down, God uses imperfect people to show that it isn't about us, it's about God. And not about what we do, but it's about what God does. You know, that's why the good, the bad, and the ugly is all included. And it made me think of the song, Who Am I by Casting Crowns. Do you know that one?
Mhm.
And, who am I that the Lord of all the earth would care to know my name? Well, the refrain is not because of who I am, but because of what you've done, not because of what I've done, but because of who you are, I'm yours. I mean, that just really struck me at the end of last week's. That song just came to me and stayed with me. The good, the bad, and the ugly, everything is included, no,
Yeah.
all the really bad stuff is still in there too.
Yeah, they're really bad. And God used some pretty darn imperfect people, and he didn't always pick out the best ones to be. I mean, I look at the difference between Jacob and Esau. Esau, really, he was who he was. There wasn't anything deeper. And he ended up being the kinder one, but God picked the sneaky, underhanded one to be the one that was to be the ancestor. I think, okay, who am I to say who to choose, and who can I say is who walks into the church, which one is worthy to be there and which one isn't? You just
Mm.
That's not,
God's got a plan. Yeah. Okay, any more comments on the entire book of Genesis before we say sayonara?
what are we doing next?
I'm retiring is what I'm doing next. I'm retiring. I'm tiring for a while.
I know. We talked about that while you were off for a while there.
No, I heard you. I was there. Just because you couldn't see me didn't mean I couldn't see you.
I'm really gonna miss this group and you, Pastor Molly. And yeah.
Well, I vote that we don't disband the group. We take a break and then we figure out a way to work our way through Exodus.
Ooh.
I like that idea.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, we're only partway into the story. We're gonna, we got a few more years to go before we get into the New Testament.
just a few.
I would just want
Right.
to say, Molly, that, I've read Genesis before. And if people ever said, what's Genesis about? I would have said, well, it's about creation and, how God made the world in, 7 days and Adam and Eve and all that. But I never, and that would have been it. So to go through it like this and then read it again, it was very moving. It's just like, this was it. This is how everything happened. So thank you for that.
Great.
And recently, Molly in church suggested that some of us are thinking that we're doing a good Bible study by reading a little verse in a little chapter, a little section in a what is it called? Our Daily Bread or
Daily bread, yeah.
and
The room.
suggest and suggesting that we spend the time. There is a scripture they suggest you read, and there's other things that you're supposed to do, and just by spending 2 minutes to read the thing is not enough, and that we really need to get deep into the scriptures. And she challenged us to do that, to be very intentional and get into the scriptures. And I think that if she made that suggestion, that she ought to at least offer in her retirement to take care of us a little bit
Till we're ready to do it on our own, because we sort of need her.
Well, here's the answer. No,
Oh, I knew that was coming.
no, I am very, very definitely taking the summer through
Mhm.
September off without anything.
We can wait.
You can ask me in September.
Do,
I'm not
maybe
changing my
want to
phone
take that
number.
offline.
Oh, yeah, we better go offline. I am gonna go offline now. All right.